people have always kind of sent me messages, send me photographs, connected. Now it's easier, through Facebook, through Instagram, through WhatsApp, all kinds of things. People keep sending me photos of a building that they have spotted while moving around, of a building with a clock, So this is how it has grown. Partly me, largely me hunting for them, and then a certain aspect which is, which people in Bombay keep telling me about. So we stand at 96 and counting as of now. The actual experiences of photographing it. I think for me, the real takeaway or the most interesting aspect has been how people in the city of Bombay have responded to the work, in the sense that a lot of architectural photography also, or at least in this project, one of the things that I was keen on was to kind of find vantage points to shoot a lot of these buildings which had clocks. And this meant that I was sometimes going up to people's houses, complete strangers, and in the middle of the afternoon ringing the bell. Now this might otherwise seem kind of very normal and things like that. It was normal at one point of time as well. But however, things changed, post the 1992 riots, the 1993 bomb blasts in Bombay, where doing pictures like these, where you wanted to go up on the terrace of a building and stuff, became very, very difficult. Permissions were almost impossible to get, because I think what had happened was, fear had crept into the equation. People began to get very suspicious of strangers. And here I was, a complete rank stranger, landing up at somebody's house in the afternoon with the oddest of requests, if you think about it. Saying, can you allow me into your house and access to, a particular window or a balcony to photograph another building with a clock, and in most cases the problem was that, people were really perplexed because they didn't know what building you were talking about, because they had forgotten about the building that was perhaps outside their their balcony or their window, because the clock had been dead for decades. People had forgotten to look at the clock or refer to the clock. And if you persisted, if you tried to convince people, tell them your story, people, it was very interesting because, people eventually start understanding. They kind of start acknowledging what you're doing. And this is what I saw. People would kind of, be genuinely surprised and interested when they would hear something like, say that, I've found 75 buildings with clocks. The project really came out of a sense of deep boredom with the job that I was doing. And it's curious because, it was my first job and I was working as a news photographer. So to suddenly feel bored, 2 years into your career was a bit of a weird thing. But the thing is, a news photographer's routine can have spikes of great excitement and then, real moments of stretches of great boredom. And I think, I was beginning to tire of that routine. And one of the things that used to happen in the newspapers in those days was they used to carry a lot of standalone photographs, which were essentially, slice of life photographs of the city. So a lot of us would be kind of wandering around the city, photographing, various things happening on its streets. Uh, I remember photographing VT station one day, and it probably was to do. There was no reason. I mean, I think it was just plain and simple a lack of imagination, which happens with a lot of young photographers, the beginning of their careers, where when they're suddenly stuck, they go and shoot architecture. And I think, that's what I did. I shot the picture, didn't think much. It wasn't a great photograph, anyways. But I remember a few weeks or maybe a month or later, I was in Calcutta shooting for a story, and I was at Esplanade trying to do a picture of the area. And one of the things I wanted to include was the Metropolitan Building. The Metropolitan Building is, this looming kind of building at the corner, right next to the Metro Cinema, I think, which has the cottage industry at the bottom. It also has a clock. And I remember with the lens that I had, with the equipment that I had, the clock kept getting cut. So I had to keep going back, and I think it gave me enough trouble to do that picture. So I think perhaps somewhere there, the clock kind of got stuck in my head. So when I returned to Bombay, and I was again, as part of the routine wandering around the city, I started noticing public clocks. This has been the first crowdsourced photography project, even before crowdsourcing became a kind of common terminology. When I first started photographing them, one of the things that I was trying to do was, or what I wanted to do was that I wanted to locate each of the buildings in its surroundings. So there was a certain kind of frame that one was doing, like a more cityscape kind of image. And as you went along, you realized, for instance, that it's not always possible. Okay. So, the idea then changes. And that's what I'm saying. So you were trying to solve a problem, you encounter a problem. Very recently, a friend kind of had spotted a clock, and we went looking for it again to photograph. And what you realized was it probably had to be one of the tiniest clocks that I had seen. The hands had fallen off. It didn't have numbers in English. And I'm emphasizing that because I'm saying visually those become cues for us. It wasn't in English, it was in Devanagari script. And it was really tiny, in a very odd kind of position on the facade of the building. So the thing is, the challenge was, how do you photograph this? If you go too loose, then you almost don't see the clock, because it's really like a dot in the frame. If you go too close, then it seems like a bit of a pointless photograph, because it just seems like a edge of a window and a bit of the wall. So I think this aspect, this has really been the challenge. There have been some other challenges, like for instance, in the beginning, like I said, I was trying to do these kind of pictures, and they were all largely shot from the street level. So there's this building called as the Khoja Jamaat Khana. It's in Dongri, and the earliest pictures that I had shot were from the street. It's a narrow lane, about 3-4 story buildings, Mangalore tiled sloping roofs, that kind of thing. And at the end of that street is this kind of towering structure, much like clock towers are meant to be by design, where they kind of tower over the neighborhood. It wasn't a great photograph, but it was part of the first exhibition. And then, because I've photographed a lot of these buildings on multiple occasions, I remember walking in that neighborhood with a friend once. This was monsoon time, and we happened to climb up. We saw some of these guys walking on those sloping roofs, applying tar, which is what is very commonly done just before monsoons in Bombay. And we thought that might be an interesting angle to shoot from. So we somehow managed to go up, climbed up that terrace. I remember it was probably one of the most scariest episodes, because I remember wearing Kolhapuri chappals and I was up there because I hadn't planned on the shoot. I didn't know I would be up on a roof like that. And if you slipped, on those kind of tiles, you would really be, that would be the end of the story. But what's interesting is, the photograph that emerged, what's happening in that neighborhood is that there is a humongous redevelopment project that is currently underway. So if from up on that terrace, when you see that clock tower and you see photographs of all these newer high rises that have come, it just makes me wish, I wish I had found this vantage point, say 15 years back, because it would have been a great comparative photograph of how the city is changing.